In your last movie called Coming Off Psych Drugs and in your other movies, you talk about the harm of drugs. So, how serious is the drug situation in today's society, and what are the consequences of that?
Of psych drugs in
Yeah,
specific. Um,
or
well,
of drugs in general.
I'll try psych drugs first. That the the obvious thing that turns most people against psych drugs is there have a lot of them have horrible side effects. I mean, all of them have side effects. It's just that not everyone gets affected by the side effects the same way. But it's like, people's, let's say antipsychotics in specific, lifespan becomes much shorter. It's like, I think the average person with the same diagnosis, if two people are diagnosed with schizophrenia, one takes the psych drugs, one doesn't. On average, the person who takes the psych drugs has a 25-year less life expectancy. They cause brain shrinkage. They cause all sorts of physical effects in the body. Long-term causes, they cause things like dementia. A lot of people get diabetes on them, Parkinsonian problems, tardive dyskinesia, um, oh God, kidney problems, liver problems. It's like, you name it. Sexual impotence, heart disease, massive weight gain in a lot of people. I've known people who have, lost their eyesight because of these drugs. And those are the mild ones. Here's the extreme ones. All the people who have committed suicide on them. They just got on the drugs and just something happened inside of them that it just like literally was the causative factor. That the straw that broke the camel's back and they committed suicide. But all the other ones are extreme also. So that's something that's pretty obvious. A lot of people who, especially if you know a lot of people who take the psych drugs, you'll hear tons of side effects, and also feeling like a zombie, can't pay attention, can't read anymore, can't focus, can't think straight, just want to sleep all the time, loss of motivation. I mean, these are the things that I hear about all the time, get emailed all the time. Or then there's another thing. People get on the drugs, becoming violent, full of rage, becoming more psychotic, becoming loss of all their relationships, loss of interest in interacting, an inability to have conversations, blah, 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 blah. So those are all, and then, toxicity of the blood, neuroleptic malignant syndrome, with a serotonin-oriented drug, serotonin syndrome. I mean, and I've heard, by the way, all these things I just described, in the last week of doing film screenings, I heard all of these. That's just in 1 week, and I've been doing this for years. So it's like constant stories about these horrors. But I think on a deeper level, the real issue I have with drugs is that they send a person a message that you can't do it yourself, you need a drug to do it. You need something outside of you to save you. And so the deeper message is whatever it is that's inside of you can't help you. And so it's like the message is you can't solve your own problems. You can't do this inner work, to use your term. You can't do the self-archeology. You can't gather that self-knowledge. You can't figure it out. You can't work through your problems. You need this external helper. And you need it long-term. You need to be dependent on this because there's something wrong with your brain. And that's the message when people take a long-term drug or a drug that's antipsychotic. They need something to undo it because they don't have the resources within themselves. And my experience is that's a horrible message. That's a lie. Well, first of all, it's just not true. But second, because people can do it themselves, and they can do it with the help of other people and interactionally and through internal work. But what a terrible message to send someone. It's an absolutely cruel and hopeless message that someone can't do it themselves. So in a bizarre way, sometimes for some people, I think that they've actually had a lot of benefit by having nasty side effects from the drugs. Because if people didn't have the side effects, they'd say, well, this drug makes me feel good. It's helping me, so I'm going to just keep taking it. They're still going to be getting that message, that terrible message that they can't do it themselves and they can't solve their own problem and they need this external pill. But they're not, and so they're going to keep taking it. Whereas if they get a horrible side effect, there's going to be some wake-up call. Oh my God, I'm taking poison. And so thank God for many people for the side effects, because then they're like, I don't want to take this drug. And then they have to start looking for alternatives. And one of the alternatives for many people is, oh my God, I need to do inner work. I need to take responsibility for myself. I need to figure out who I am and what's going on inside of me. So that's specifically my answer to the psych drugs. But I think that's true for a lot of drugs in general. Why do people take drugs in general, including alcohol and other drugs? They're looking for something outside them to make themselves feel differently because they're not comfortable with their feelings. I could feel a little hypocritical saying this because sometimes I do some of those drugs now because, I don't know, I guess you could say I'm exploring life. Sometimes I smoke cigarettes. Sometimes I drink alcohol. Sometimes I try other things. And so psych drugs, no. On the other hand, I did get prescribed Valium because I'm doing a lot of overseas flying. And often I'll have to do a speaking engagement the next day in a 6-hour different time zone. And it's like, if I don't sleep in the airplane, it's horrendous for me because I don't sleep. I'm 6'4". Or whatever that is, 195 in terms of centimeters. That, you know, my knees are right up against the seat in front of me. I'm all uncomfortable. If I don't sleep, it's horrible. So I sometimes have taken a Valium. I've done it a couple of times for overseas flights, and I found that, wow, I can sleep. And it totally helps with my jet lag. Well, could I do that internally? Could I get to such a point where I could meditate and calm myself down and relax and sleep? Occasionally it's happened, but a lot of times it doesn't happen, especially if I have someone in front of me who's moving their seat back and forth. But I don't know. In general, it's like, in general, I like being pretty clean. I don't like taking regular medications or drugs of any kind, and I like focusing on my internal world to work out my deeper problems. And I think for that reason, I think I've become very strong and don't really see breakdown or a breakdown as being in my future. Though, of course, if some horribly traumatic thing happened to me, I got stuck in a prison and I got beaten and raped all the time, I could see myself losing my mind. I could see myself really struggling to keep my connection with myself, but I could see it as possible that some ancient traumas inside of me would upwell. I could become overwhelmed. I could dissociate and go into some altered state just to protect myself, you know, really split myself off into a deep side of myself. But at this point, I don't see that happening in my life unless something really extreme happened.